You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hey, mamas. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Mama Work It podcast. I am so glad you're here. If you are new, my name is Marissa Lonick. I am the founder of Mama Work It, where we support women in the juggle of mom life, work life, wife life, fill in the blank life. And today on the show, we have an amazing guest with a really important topic, and one I gotta say, I'm very intrigued and excited to talk about. So we have Megan Michelson. She joined Mary Flo at a company called Birds and Bees almost 10 years ago to help bring the message and framework of teaching kids about sex to a new generation of parents. Megan was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, graduated from Baylor University. And before diving into the world of sex education, Megan was a middle school teacher. She and her husband, Blake, have been married for 16 years and have 3 young kids. She is in the trenches of motherhood. Me too, Megan. So happy and so tired. And now she's helping all of us, many of us who feel like these conversations are very awkward, to ease the burden and have these talks with our kids. And I'm just so excited to learn more about this, to gain knowledge on this topic as a mom. I'm a mom of 4. I'm so happy you're here, Megan. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Marissa, for having me. This will be a fun chat. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. All right. So I love to always ask guests, just tell us a little more about your journey as a mom, as a working mom, and what led you to join Mary Flo at Birds and Bees.
So long story short, when I was teaching, or maybe long story long, I'll try to make it really short, but I was teaching middle school before I had kids of my own. And so I was teaching 5th, 6th, 7th was kind of the range I went back and forth from. But anyway, so I was just in the trenches of middle school as a young adult. So I was just kind of taking in all the information that was in their little worlds. And I was really at the time kind of concerned or overwhelmed at how sexualized their culture and their world was. Because at the time I thought, oh my gosh, they're so young. And now, of course, as a mother, I'm like, you are so young, but at the time, even as a young adult, I thought, wow, they seem very young to be dealing with this information and be talking like this and whatever. Anyway, so one day I was passing out flyers for them to take home to their parents. And it said, parents, learn how to talk to your kids about sex with Mary Flo Ridley. And I had happened to grow up with the Ridley family. And I did not know that Mrs. Ridley had this secret job. And so I was like, oh my goodness. And Mary Flo is wonderful. And you just would not think that she would do this. And so I was very surprised by this information and thought, well, I've got to go. And I also wanted to hear what she had to say because of my concerns with my students. Anyways, so I go that night and I really, I heard her give her spiel. She had been at this point sharing this curriculum for 20 something years, probably 20 years at that point. And I left just blown away. And I thought, oh my goodness, every parent has got to hear this. And if every parent could talk to their kids about sex in this way, middle school could look so different. Even as adults, marriages could look so different. We as a culture are just not talking about sex in healthy, age-appropriate ways. So that was the beginning. And I didn't think that this would become a career by any means. But looking back, so then I had kids of my own, and there was a meet. I ran into one of her kids, and she kind of mentioned her mom wanting to step back a bit, but she doesn't want to take over because this is a really weird job. But I was like, I might want to. And so anyways, the long and short of it, I started training under Mary Flo, and that's been almost 10 years now. And so I started training under her so it all started as a speaking business, and Mary Flo would speak all over the country at that time. And then I started training under her about 10 years ago, and I speak all over Texas. She travels out of state just because it's easier with my little kids for me not to go that far. And then around 8 years ago, we rebranded and formed the Birds and Bees. Just kind of a new name, a new business. And now we have an online course, and we reach a bunch of parents around the world through that. So I did not think when I quit teaching, I had my oldest, and I didn't really think I would be a working mom. That was kind of, you know, depending on your teaching job, and mine was a very low paying teaching job, it didn't make much sense at all for me to go back. Um, so I stayed home with her. And then I had my second. We actually had a stint overseas, and we moved to Peru with my husband's job. So obviously I couldn't work over there. And then this kind of happened, and it was unlooked for. And I think the benefit of working moms today, for some working moms today, is flexibility. You know, this job has grown so much as my kids have grown, and it's changed. And the way I work has changed so much over the past 10 years. So it's been a huge gift, and a really a career that was not really I was looking for, but it has been so fulfilling, and just a huge part of my life.
Yeah. And I think when we open ourselves up, the opportunities flow to us, and they flow at the exact moment, the right time that, we didn't know we needed them or we wanted
Mm-hmm.
them. So I love how that just all unfolded for you in that way. And there was such a history with the family, and you never thought you'd be in
Yeah,
the position now that you're.
totally. And there's even like a funny story of, I had heard her again once I had a kid, my oldest, and I took so many notes, and I was on a girls trip that following weekend, and I made all my girlfriends sit down and get a glass of wine and sit down. And, I've got to read these notes to you. And I just read, and I was just like, doing my job before I even knew it was a job. Just saying,
Mm-hmm.
listen up, I've got something to say. So, it was meant to be, but I feel very grateful that, I landed somewhere that is an unusually specific combination of things I'm passionate about, and skills that I have, and all those things. So it's been, I didn't think I'd land in sex education, but here I am.
Here you are. Yeah. And I have personally taken this course. I took
Oh,
it
good.
through my former church. They organized a night, how to talk to your kids about sex, and they showed
Yeah.
us your course. And let me just tell you, it was really, really informative. And we're going to dive into some questions. And I know some of these topics you even bring up in more depth in the course. So we're going to scratch the surface on the show. But
Hmm.
guys, if you like what you hear, this course is phenomenal. I took it. So let's talk about, how do I just like get started talking to my kids about sex? Because this is different. When I took this course, and I know your philosophy a little bit of the background, it's different than what I thought I should do. So tell us more
Hmm.
about Birds and Bees philosophy here.
So I think our overall mission is to get rid of the talk. And if you're listening, not watching, I'm using quotation marks around the talk. And I think a lot of people have so many memories that come to surface when you say the talk. That one time mom or dad knocks on your door, and, around 12 or 13, and then walks in and tells you everything you've never wanted to know about sex. And then that door is closed, and it's never spoken of again. And that is kind of the traditional way of doing things, right? We have this huge topic called sex, um, that is, assumingly a large part of people's lives, if you look at the whole life scale, whatever. But, and we decide the best way to approach it is one time, and an awkward talk and an awkward age. And that is kind of the way that our culture, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but traditionally speaking, that's kind of the way that we handle this. Like, when are you going to tell them? And you tell them once, and that gets painful. Um, so at Birds and Bees, our mission is to get rid of that, because our kids need more than that and deserve more than that, and to replace the talk with multiple age appropriate conversations. And so we teach parents how to have these multiple age appropriate conversations. And ultimately, we want to equip parents to not have this be a taboo topic in their home. And not so much sex specifically, even though that's a big part of what we talk about, but also bodies and body parts and periods and private parts and body boundaries and conception and consent and pornography and all of these fun topics. We want parents to have a voice, and we want kids, more importantly, we want kids to hear their parents' voice on this topic. And so something we say a lot is, we teach you, you teach them. And so that's our goal at Birds of Bees, is to really equip and empower parents to have their voice on this topic, and to use their voice, because that's what we really want, is parents can really share information and knowledge and values with their kids, if they're looking for opportunities, these conversations can come up a lot more than you think.
Right. I mean, parents are really the best teachers for their kids.
For sure.
And even teachers need training. So this is really good information and a good framework to, take what works for you, leave what doesn't. But like, it's just really great knowledge to have. Absolutely.
Our hope is that people finish the course or come hear me or Mary Flo speak in person and leave feeling like kind of fired up, like I can do this. And that's like the confidence we want to instill in parents, is because we are very aware that this topic makes parents nervous, right? And it makes parents kind of feel like, oh, I just don't want to do this, or dread, or I can't say those words or whatever. And our hope is that by the end of this, you feel like confident that like, I got this. I am equipped for my child. And because like you said, parents can be the best teachers.
Right. Right. So obviously we can prepare as parents. We can take the course, we can listen to you or Mary Flo speak, we can Google stuff and get all prepared. But what happens when a kid just catches us off guard and asks us a question and we're not prepared to answer it? What do we do?
So ultimately what we want to do is to affirm to our kids that they have come, or confirm that they have come to the right place, and also affirm their curiosity, because kids ask questions. And so what we don't want to do is shut them down. What we don't want to do is say, shh, don't say that. Or who told you that? Because our shock or our shushing can lead to their shame. And it really just shuts down future conversations, because we're essentially teaching them through our verbal reaction or our nonverbal reaction. Your facial expressions are really important in these topics. We're essentially teaching them, hey, this is not, we don't talk about this, or we don't use those words, or you can't say that in front of your little sister, or, mom's not comfortable answering this. And so what we don't want to do is shut down these conversations. Now, is that to say that every single time we're going to answer it perfectly and think, oh, nailed it, this is so great, I love my answer? No, but just to, what part of what we talk about at Birds and Bees is to create your family message, which is really figuring out, what do I believe about sex? What do I want my kids to know about sex? And then how can I, kind of follow that direction, go in that direction with my answers? So again, the topic of sex is very personal. A lot of families like to incorporate their faith into these conversations. Some families don't. Some families really want to focus on consent or healthy relationships or other values, or their future. Some want to focus on a Bible-based understanding of what sex is. So every family is going to have a different direction, but you have to kind of understand where you're going with these answers so you can feel pretty good about your answer, right? So you can kind of think, okay, I didn't answer that great, but I can always go back. So we want to have families to have direction and kind of a game plan, but then we also really are big believers in this idea that we want you to be purposeful parents. We want you to kind of have purpose behind your conversations and be intentional with the words you use and look for opportunities, but also knowing we're not going to be perfect parents. We are going to mess up. You've taken the course. That doesn't mean you're going to nail every question, right? I do this for a living. That's not to say that I don't get nervous sometimes or I'm going to mess up. And so we just encourage parents to circle back and go back to their child. I mean, these kids are with us all the time, right? They're either in our cars or in their houses or somewhere with us. And we can always go back and say, sweetheart, earlier today, you asked me a really good question and I did not give you my best answer. So I'm going to start over. And so it's really not so much thinking through like, how do I answer every question perfectly? It's more of like, how do I make myself available to my child where I'm a safe place for them to come to with their questions. And so by taking kind of the ownership of these conversations and being that proactive parent that can move towards them with information, and then also be the parent who's willing to go back afterwards and say, hey, I just kind of messed up. I just was kind of frazzled when we were driving home today and I didn't give you my best answer in the car. So I'm going to tell you a bit more information.
Yeah, I love that, because I think it's really important to show kids that we're human. I can remember being younger and like having a revelation one day of like, oh my God, my parents aren't perfect. And I think when you come from a place of vulnerability, it just humanizes you to your kids and it makes you closer honestly.
Totally. And that's what we want is I think there's two issues I have with the talk, and that is it's not very effective as far as like information absorption, right? That's just too much information at once. But it's also not very helpful from a parent point of view. Like you have one shot, don't mess this up. Like it's a lot of pressure. And so I think this new way of doing it, what we try to teach at Birds and Bees, we call it the drip, drip, drip method. Because you're just doing a little bit at a time. It really gives you so much freedom as a parent because you're not going to, if you mess up, that's okay. You can talk about this again tomorrow or bring it up next week. Or, it just kind of gives you so much more freedom to be that imperfect parent because there's no such thing as a perfect parent, right? And so it gives you a lot of freedom as parents, but it also kind of helps you feel more confident with these conversations because there's not that pressure of like, this is it. Don't mess it up. This is all I got. This is one shot. And so that's our hope is that parents would feel like they can engage in these topics without this panic of, I'm going to mess it up.
Yeah, definitely takes the pressure off. So what if you're listening and you're like, well, my kids are a little older. Like maybe I'm too late to try this method. What would you say to a parent listening that thinks that?
So our target audience, typically speaking, is parents with kids ages 1 through 10. And that's not necessarily what you would think when you think about talking to your kids about sex. But so much of what we're doing is trying to fill those curious early years with our information and our voice and our values. So we always say sooner is better than later. However, hear me say this, later is better than never. And that is something we are big believers in because we'll have parents come hear us speak, and their kids are 12 or 13 and they're thinking, oh my gosh, am I too late? Like I've said nothing. And no, you are not too late. You can always start moving towards your children with information. And that might sound a bit different, like we use some examples of like cutting an apple open and looking at the seeds, and deep inside this apple is seeds that create new apples. I mean, so maybe you wouldn't use that example with a 13-year-old, or maybe you can, but just to realize like, okay. And then we encourage parents with older kids kind of own it a little bit, and you're going to have to be a bit more direct, but just say, hey, listen, you're going to hear about this topic a lot over these next 5, 8, 10 years. And you're going to hear probably a lot of confusing information. And I need to do a better job of speaking up on this. And so we're going to start talking about it. You don't have to look at me. You don't have to sit in the front seat while I'm talking. We can walk around the block while it's pitch black, so you don't have to make eye contact. But this is part of my job as being your mom. This is part of my job as being your dad. And so sorry I didn't start sooner, but we're going to dive in. And so I would just encourage parents to it's never too late.
Yeah, I think that's really important because I think a lot of times just with lots of things in life, we're like, oh, it's too late for that, or I'm 40 now, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
But this topic in particular, I agree. I mean, we never stop being parents. Think about our own parents. Like they still are very
Right.
much our parents, even though we're
Totally.
grown women. So
And right. And so I would say whoever's listening, if you have little kids, start talking. If you have teenagers, keep talking or start. It's really never too late.
yeah. Do you ever get worried that your kids are going to share this information with either classmates or siblings that you're not ready to introduce this to?
Yes. So that is a pause that a lot of parents have. It's like, okay, that's fine. I can tell my kids this, but I don't want them to tell their third grade class, or I don't want to be that parent that's like, did you hear? And like you said, even with siblings at home. And so we just encourage parents to be really kind of black and white about it and say, sweetheart, what we're talking about is like a parent child conversation, or like a mom and Susie conversation, or however you want to say it. And like, it's not your job to go back to school and tell all your friends. It's not your job to tell your little brother and little sister. And with little kids, or middle age, elementary school, tween kids, we kind of encourage you as parents to like empower them with this information and like make them feel a little special. Like, you're 10 years old and I think it's appropriate for you to know this, but they're not 10 yet. So you don't need to go tell your little brother and sister. A lot of times we will compare this to like the Santa Claus conversation, and kind of say, hey, because you're 10, you get this information. So now you're kind of on our side, but we're not going to tell it. We don't need to tell your little brother and sister. And so really just encouraging parents to set those clear boundaries. Don't assume that like there's like an unspoken rule. Say it out loud. Hey, this is for us to talk about. If you hear your friends talking about it, come back and talk to me and dad, because we know more than your friends and we will always talk to you. But it is not your job to go back on that bus and tell everybody. So just be mindful of other families' boundaries and set those clear boundaries within your own family.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do you feel like is the first step someone should take if they want to get started in laying the foundation down with their kiddos on sex education?
So, I mean, obviously, I talked a little bit earlier about like creating your family message and focusing on that kind of proactive question. What do I want them to know about sex? So, first and foremost, I would say to kind of start thinking about that. And if there is a mom and dad in the picture, then talk together and figure out with one another, okay, how do you want to handle this in our home? What do you want our kids to know about sex? So, because so often when it comes to this topic, parents have a really clear idea of what they want their kids to not know. And they have a really clear idea of what they don't, we're not going to know this. We're not talking about this. You're not reading this. You're not saying this. I mean, we have our very clear idea of what you're not going to do and what you're not going to know. And so we really encourage parents to kind of flip the script a little bit and think, what do I want them to know? What do I believe? And so the step one, if you're listening today, which would be to really start thinking through, what do I believe about this? What is the purpose of sex? How can I take my beliefs and instill that into my children through these little conversations? So step one is great because it really doesn't involve your kids. So really kind of thinking about that. And then practically speaking, as far as like conversations with little kids, I think the best thing you could start doing is to start using anatomically correct words for their body parts. And so we're talking penis, vagina, vulva, whatever word you like to use, but we are really big believers on those medical, respectful, anatomically correct words for private parts.
Got it. Great advice. So tangible and actionable. I love it. All right, Megan, we're going to dive in now to our lightning round. This is when we just like to ask our guests random, just for fun type questions, just to get to know you a little bit on the personal side. Are you ready?
Perfect. I think so. Ready or not.
All right, let's do it. What if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life? What would it be? Calories don't count.
That is good to know. I would say pizza.
Pizza. Yeah.
I love a good thin crust pizza.
That would be my answer too, actually. I agree. So you already said you're an extrovert, so I won't ask you that question. What book are you reading right now?
Oh, I wish I had an answer for you, but I am not reading anything right now. So I apologize.
Okay.
I want to be reading. I feel like in the summer, I try to read like light beach reads and like keep it very easy breezy. And then in the fall, I feel like I try to get back into like parenting or I just finished Anxious Generation. I don't know if you've read that one.
Yes, I have actually.
But that was excellent.
Yeah.
So that was my last parenting book. And it was just mind blowing. Everyone has to read it. But so now I have, a couple other books on my desk that I haven't like gotten to yet, but I will. I feel like I'm still in back to school mode of like transitioning. I'm like, when is it going to not feel like at the beginning? So hopefully I'll be reading again soon. But today or this week, I am not reading any books.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Back to school season kind of lingers here too. I get that.
It does. It's been lingering.
All right. Final question. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Superpower would be, this is such a sad, mundane one, but I would have a meal planning, meal prepping, meal cleaning superpower.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's very practical for motherhood.
Because I feel like it's very practical, but I feel like the most stressful part of my day to day as a working mom is we're eating dinner again. Every night we eat, and it's always something. So if I could just have like a superpower, it would be that there would be, maybe this is like something you would hire instead of having a power, but if I had a superpower, that's what it would be.
Yeah, so we actually recently released an episode with Steph Chen, who is the founder of Anyday Microwave Cookware, and she just blew my mind with all these crazy tips and hacks of saving time in the kitchen and using the microwave to make a lot of meals. So definitely check that episode out if you want to get
Wow.
closer to that superpower, because this
Yeah.
felt like a superpower to me. All
Okay, that's
right,
good to know.
Megan. Yeah, so please tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can learn more about birds and bees, where they can get more information on your course.
So the best place to find us is our website is birds-bees.com. And that's where you can find the online course if you want to take it. It's like an hour and a half course, but once you have it, you have access forever. So you can watch it, with your friends, you can watch it with your husband, you can watch it again 2 years later when your middle kid gets older. It never expires. And then Marissa, I'll send you a code. And so your listeners can have a discount code for the online
Amazing.
course. And then another place to find us is on Instagram. So we have a pretty active community on there. It's birds__bees. Not very catchy when you say it out loud, but it's a really great community of parents all over the world that are kind of navigating this topic. And people share so many stories, which I think is always helpful to hear, even for myself, but of like, okay, I'm not the only person who has a kid who's asking these questions or a kid who's doing this or whatever. So it's a great place to be. And we share lots of talking tips for free on Instagram. So those are the two places.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And yes, sometimes we got to get creative with those Instagram handles. Like when I started Mama Work It was taken. So we're Let Mama Work It on there. And that's
Yeah.
just what we are.
Gotta
So
go with the flow.
yes. All right, Megan, thanks again for being a guest. I know I learned a ton and this was great reinforcement after having taken your course. And I know I need to watch it again because it's been a while and there's so much to learn in there. So thank you.
You're welcome. You can always have a refresh.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.